if you study Mesopotamian archaeology, in the prehistorical period, and that of course, the prehistorical period is defined by the time period before the advent of writing. In that period, there are only two movements of people, and we're not talking about movements of pottery or trade that's going on, but only two movements of people where they expand outward from Mesopotamia. And as part of my study, I looked very carefully into these two expansions, they're called, and compared and contrasted them, and found that only one meets all of the requirements of the dispersion of people at the time of the Tower of Babel. And that is at the period of the late Uruk period, the Uruk expansion.
And is that right here?
So the expansion takes place from Eridu, and people are expanding outward. We have signs of the expansion to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, all the way as far as Egypt, and of course throughout the Levant and even into Anatolia as well. So as this expansion took place, of course, it's going to be the largest, you're going to see the largest remnant of the expansion in the area that's closest to the city of Babel, which is Eridu. And that largest city that developed was the city of Uruk itself, which is the type site for the Uruk period.
And when you say evidence, that is the artifacts that we find in these archaeological digs?
Exactly. There's an enormous amount and very specific kinds of material culture that attest to this expansion of people that I'm connecting to the post-Babel dispersion. Here we have some bevel rim bowls, which are diagnostic of the Uruk period. These forms of pottery are very easy to manufacture, and basically they were molded. So there would have been molds made to be able to put clay into each of the molds, and that it would have been spread to the side. Then they would have been allowed to cure in the sun. But they could make it very rapidly. I mean, it's the same kind of technology basically that we have with the Ford assembly line. This was an assembly line for the making of pottery, and it coincides with urbanization, because when you have a much larger group of people living in one area, you have to more efficiently take care of all of those people.
That's why you then build a mold.
Exactly, exactly. And we have fingerprints on many of the bevel rim bowls that show that they were made by hand. And there's other important artifacts as well, such as those two spouted jars. And those spouted jars, in larger form, these are smaller versions, but in larger form, the spouted jars are also diagnostic, actually for the middle Uruk period. And during the late Uruk period, for the larger ones, which were beer jars, they would tilt the spout and droop it down to prevent air from coming in and causing the beer to go bad. And then we have these important administrative tablets, these clay tablets, that really were the precursor to writing. And the late Uruk period actually was the very moment before we have written language beginning.
So this is the time when we really begin to see human beings either begin to write or to develop the language to produce symbols for writing.
Absolutely, and it all began with clay tablets that were used to represent accounting for numbers of sheep, numbers of goats, and other things. And from this, writing itself developed.